the Football Tribe UG channel. Robert Kesakos is your usual suspect. Welcome back to yet another live broadcast on your favorite football updates channel. It's a pleasure to be back with you on this beautiful Monday morning, 10 minutes past 9 a.m. East African time. So we are quite almost spot on. I'd promised that would come at 9:30, but I have an emergency situation that comes up in the next couple of hours. So I was sort of compelled to come 20 minutes earlier than I had anticipated or promised. It's you again. Good morning, Pedri. Always to the dot. Thank you so much for the continued love and support. Thank you so much. So this morning, I hope you guys had a wonderful weekend. How are you, my friend? I'm good. I'm good. How about yourself? How are you doing? How was your weekend? Anything exciting? Because this morning we're going to talk about, of course, in extension, the events that did happen over there in Italy in the Inter Milan versus Juventus game. Because in the aftermath of that game, Luciano Spalletti, Comolli, as well as Chiellini did confront referee Federico La Penna over what happened in that game or what transpired. So, I think it was bound to happen given the kind of events that did transpire. I'm good. I just woke up and immediately went to see you online. Yeah, exactly. Thank you so much, Pedri. One of the most kind persons I've had the opportunity to interact with online. Kindness is the kind of commodity that sometimes comes in scarcity. But yeah, thank you so much for the continued love and support. So we'll be talking about that situation, because an official apology was sent out by the referee scheduler, as well as talking about the situation with La Pena saying he was dumbfounded when he got to see the incident. And I remember when it happened, I was saying the Inter Milan player, in this particular case, Alessandro Bastoni, should be the one getting a yellow card for simulation, for woodwinking the referee. And yet, and then we talked about the VAR situation. So we're going to get into that perhaps in a bit more detail to try and understand the circumstances that did prevail in that 3-2 victory for Inter Milan. Very, very crucial game it was, given the sort of significance that it had on the standings of the Italian Serie A, because, and even if it had not. And even if it did not have, it wouldn't have had much bearing on the Italian Serie A table, still it would have been of significance, because it was a clash of titans, a clash of giants in the weekend. But the victory had a direct impact, on the table. But continuously, for me, in part, that's my biggest frustration when it comes to footballing decisions, that when the referees get it wrong and it's not corrected within normal time or within that situation when it has happened, unfortunately, in the nature of football or in the nature of sport, as often is the case elsewhere, is that you do not get to make amends. Like a result is a result. There's no going back to it. There's no sort of way around it to say, yeah, we were wrong on this one. Says a very odd Monday, because I'm not used to my team playing on Monday. Mostly it's a relegation battle that plays on Monday or something. By the way, I was a bit surprised in a way that you guys played Atletico de Madrid, but Atletico Madrid were able to play on Sunday, and then your game was pushed on to a Monday. And usually it's ordinarily not the kind of thing that you'd expect that gigantic teams tend to play on Monday Night Football. But yeah, it is what it is. Atletico de Madrid, of course, themselves getting whooped over the weekend by, I think, Rayo Vallecano by 3-0. I did not see that coming, by the way. But like we keep saying, in football, anything is possible. So yeah. Anyways, like I said, let's start off with where the gist of the conversation is this morning when it comes to that refereeing decision. So, on Saturday at about a quarter to 11 p.m., there was a gigantic encounter between Inter Milan and Juventus in the Italian Serie A there, and the game ended in a 3-2 victory for Inter Milan, with Pietro Zielinski, I think, scoring the winner in that one later on, but Cambiaso had scored in either side, or in both ends, first of all for an own goal to give Inter the lead before scoring, making amends, or on the other side, to restore parity. And then Esposito did score from a brilliant header thanks to a cross from Dimarco to make it 2-1 for Inter Milan. And then later on in that game, Manel Locatelli, the Juventus skipper, did score to restore parity. But unfortunately, they could not keep it, they could not hold it out to a 2-2 draw as it had been the previous weekend when they shared the spoils in a similar sort of scoreline, 2-2 draw against Lazio. They came from 2 goals down in that one with goals from Winston McKennie and Kalulu, or Pierre Kalulu. This time around, Kalulu, instead of, being a hero, he was sort of turned into a villain, quite unfortunately so. And not that he was worthy of being turned into a villain, but that's what it boiled down to when referee Federico La Penna sent him off with a second booking. Now, here's how the events transpire, or at least to the best of my recollection, and correct me if you think it went otherwise. So Kalulu is already on a booking. We are around the 42nd minute of the game. He's judged to have pulled Alessandro Bastoni, which, because he tries to come for a challenge, then takes sort of a pause or a stop, an instant stop to say, yeah, I'm not going to make contact on this one. Perhaps I'm late for it. And he sort of puts his arm in front of Bastoni, which he sort of withdraws again quickly. And then Alessandro Bastoni uses that kind of moment to hoodwink the referee into making it appear that Pierre Kalulu had, pulled him down. And the referee, without even thinking twice, quickly dishes out a yellow card and then subsequently a red card because it was his second yellow card on the day. Now, first of all, I am one of those that think that not every foul should be a booking. I think you and I can both agree on that. 2, how many times do we see referees use their common sense, even in the smallest of games, because this is a big game? At some point it ought to get a bit nasty or feisty and things like that, but it wasn't even that. That they were of even worthy booking fouls and say, okay, let's calm our tempers down, let's play the game. And, they talk those players down because they know they're human beings. Tempers run high, stakes are high, and things like that. So, unfortunately, the referee decided, I do not know, to debunk his common sense, to have the discernment that Kalulu was already on a yellow card, to say, look here, mate, do not bet on your chips because you do not have really left you do not have many left within your armor for you to be dishing them around that way. So in other words, you're already on a booking. Any other slight mistake, you could get sent off. I will send you off. And then in that way, you sort of give the player a benefit of doubt. Again, I do not want to be too harsh on the referee in a way because they see some of these actions in a snap of a second, while we who react to them get the benefit of having them replayed to us, so we have better judgment compared to what they have. And that's why video assistant referee is so crucial to the game, to the sport itself. Why? Because it gives referees that sort of that second opportunity to review incidents and say, maybe I got it wrong here, or maybe I should have acted otherwise. So in this particular case, I don't want to be too harsh on the referee, but then because of the gravity or gravitas of the nature of their work, is that they must be, they must almost be sure that what I've seen is what that actually happened before I make a decision that impacts the entire game, that has an impact on the entire game. So the stakes are that high that they ought to be cautious in exercising their powers and rights, and enforcing the rules on the playing turf in that sort of sense. So he entirely gets it wrong. He's woodwinked by Alessandro Bastoni, and that's why the other part as to why I don't want to be too harsh on him is that he's equally been woodwinked by Alessandro Bastoni, who's had an act of simulation, and then unfortunately, Pierre Kalulu becomes the culprit. Now, a lot of people would ask, so if it's a wrong red card, why not, go to VAR and have the incident reviewed? Just like it is in the Premier League, and perhaps I would assume elsewhere, in the usage of VAR, if it's not, if it's a second booking, in other words, 2 yellow cards culminating into a red card, then VAR is not mandated to intervene in that sort of case. But then it takes me back to the clear and obvious error, because here you have a clear and obvious error. I'm sure 99.99% referees or match officials would agree that's not a red card. In other words, that's not a second yellow card leading to a red card. So if the referee has made that grave a mistake or an error, then why not correct it? Why not say, look here, mate, I mean, because it's so unfortunate that the linesman does not see it to help the referee. It's so unfortunate that VAR cannot intervene because of the said reason, because it's a second yellow card. Unless if it had been a straight red card, then they would be able to intervene. And we've discussed this before, arguing that the reason for the limited intervention of VAR is to not have the game being refereed by two officials, one that is on the playing turf and one that isn't. But I remember calling for an exception to the rule, because in every rule, depending on circumstances, there's an exception to that rule. So in this particular case, I'm thinking if you're the fourth official, you must be looking back on this moment somewhere on the screens, on the touchline. I do not know how, or you're getting talk back from the VAR that please communicate to Federico La Penna that that was the wrong decision, or communicate it to the third, to the assistant on the other side of the linesman, as we call them, to say, look here, mate, you've gotten this one wrong. I think you should rescind that yellow card, and then have the game play on fair and square. But unfortunately, that wasn't done. There was no exception taken to the rule to pull off that. So in the aftermath of that game, Chiellini, Luciano Spalletti, and Comolli went and attacked the referee because they were unhappy with that red card that came in the 42nd minute. Now, according to the Athletic, they say Serie A's referee designator has apologized for the clearly wrong sending off of Juventus defender Pierre Carruro against Inter, but criticized those in the league who try everything they can do to cheat the officials. And that's what we're talking about. Guys, for those of you that are just joining us, good morning. Welcome to the Football Tribe UG channel. Kindly like the broadcast, but also consider subscribing to the channel if it's your first time here. So they're saying, and that's what we're talking about, that whereas the referee, La Penna, has everything to do to blame, you give him the benefit of doubt because he equally is woodwinked by what in this particular case is termed by the referee designator as trying everything they can to cheat the officials. They try everything they can to mislead the officials into certain decisions that have a direct impact on the game, and yet they're not being honest, or that kind of situation shouldn't have happened, in that particular case. Then the story goes on to say that Kalulu was shown, okay, we've spoken about that situation. We know what the result was. But like I said, we who get to react to these situations, even if it's just a few moments as the game goes on, as we tend to do on social media and things like that, or even on these forums like we do come henceforth and speak to you guys, is that we have the benefit of revisiting these incidents at time, in multiple replays, and then have a better judgment or call to the situation, which is what ordinarily most officials do not get. So in this particular case, the referee scheduler, again, they emphasize that television replays showed no contact, but had been made by Kalulu, but the video assistant referee VAR system is unable to intervene for yellow card decisions. You get the point. But for me, like I said, we should have taken an exception to the rule. I mean, it should be common sense that prevails in this particular case. Take an exception to the rule. Why? Because yes, it's a yellow card, and two, VAR is not supposed to intervene, but this is close to, it's not the same, but I would say it's close to the case of mistaken identity. Let's assume we're playing a game of football. I commit a foul, but then it's Pedri that gets, booked. That's a case of mistaken identity. And in that particular case, VAR is mandated to intervene, Now, whereas in this particular case, VAR is not mandated to intervene. I want to think that they should have the common sense to take the exception to the rule, to speak to the referee, not even having to summon him to the monitor to say, look here, yes, we're not supposed to intervene. It's a yellow card decision, but we're telling you it's the wrong decision because according to multiple reviews, Pierre Carul does not touch Alessandro Bastoni. In any case, you shouldn't be giving him a yellow card and sending him off. Rescind that one. But but also then do not give Alessandro Bastoni the yellow card because you're taking an exception to the rule to intervene in a situation where ordinarily you shouldn't be, intervening in. So in other words, because you're not trying to referee the game, because you're intervening, taking an exception to the rule without sort of, I don't want to say prejudicing the referee. So in other words, do not give Alessandro Bastoni the yellow card because you're taking an exception to the rule to intervene in a situation ordinarily you shouldn't be intervening in, but just to keep things, square and parallel as far as the game is concerned. So he said, this is the apology from the referee scheduler. He says, we are very disappointed both with La Penna's decision, which was clearly wrong, and with the fact that VAR could not be used to rectify it. That is Gianluca Rocci, the league's referee designator, told the Italian press agency ANSA after the match. He says La Penna is mortified. La Penna is mortified and we sympathize with him. But I have to tell you the truth, he is not the only one who got it wrong, because yesterday there was a clear simulation, the latest in a long series in a league where they try everything they can to cheat us. Now, of course, the story goes on, from the New York Times or with the Athletic there. The story goes on. But, that's the gist of it. And I have two key takeaways there. Africa will never unite, says, what the hell is happening with Atletico de Madrid? You and I can only, your guess is as good as mine, really. One day they are the hottest team that you know on the planet. Then the next day they are the coldest and worst opponent you can meet in terms of being poor. So it is what it is. We'll get to discuss Diego Simeone in just a bit. So, like I said, for me, in this particular statement, there are there are about 2 or 3 key takeaways for me. Is that one, that that VAR cannot intervene. 2, that the referee is mortified, but then it goes on to say he's not the only one who got it wrong. When he says he's not the only one who got it wrong, the question is, who else got it wrong? Like I said, perhaps many referees in his situation equally could have gotten it wrong, because like I said, he got woodwinked by Alessandro Bastoni. So, but after review, like I said, after reviewing the moment, 99.99% referees will agree that's not a foul, and therefore it's not worthy of a yellow card. So I think when he says he's not the only one who got it wrong, that means La Penna got it wrong, his assistants got it wrong, the fourth official, okay, he's not supposed to, interact in these things. But if you're the fourth official, and let's assume you've seen this particular incident, the same way you see things that are off the pitch, and you speak to the referee and say, oh, maybe Christian Chivu or Luciano Spalletti just said a very derogatory word here, or they've done something wrong, and then the referee comes over, talks to the managers, or even shows yellow cards. We've seen referees come over after the fourth official has alerted them to a situation on the touchline or on the bench to give out yellow cards to players that are still on the bench, to backroom staff or medical staff or assistant coaches and things like that. We've seen that one too many times. So I'm assuming if you're the fourth official and you clearly had a clear sight on that one, then perhaps you could speak through your microphone to the referee to say, mate, you got that one wrong. It's rather a simulation as opposed to a foul. But then also there's VAR. But because VAR cannot directly intervene, that's why I said common sense should have prevailed to have an exception taken to the rule, So, but it is what it is. What's done is done. And like I said, that's the most unfortunate bit, because with that result, first of all, Inter Milan walk away with all 3 points. In walking away with 3 points, they went from 58 points to 61 points. That means the 8 points clear at the summit or the Italian Serie A table after 25 games played, 8 points clear ahead of a second place AC Milan, who have 53 points and have played a game less. And of course, in third place is Napoli, who shared the spoils in a 2-2 draw against AC Roma with 50 points there. And in fourth place is AC Roma with 47 points, Juventus in fifth with 46 points, Atlanta in sixth, Como in seventh with 41 and 42 points respectively. So that sort of impact on the game, that a result still stands even when we all come before the world and say, look here, mate, we got the decisions wrong. I don't know, but I mean, maybe, anyway, change is part of life. Should we assume a day in life of football where when such incidences happen, you have the game replayed, but then what bearing does that have on the players who perhaps were innocent? And I think instead of taking that direction, that would be the wrong move. I think we'd rather rely more on video assistant referees to create exceptions to rules. For example, and here is the thing. Why I think we can use VAR to take exceptions to certain criteria of usage is, for example, in this particular case, if Alessandro Bastoni had made the simulation inside the area for which he had been awarded a penalty, that qualifies for a clear and obvious error by the referee, that he gets someone to the monitor to say, have a second look at this, and perhaps he returns and then he gives Bastoni a yellow card and then withdraws the penalty, if that had been a penalty situation. So I'm thinking to myself, even if it's not a penalty situation, but a player through simulation hoodwinks the referee into awarding an opponent a yellow card, then that yellow card should be rescinded. Now, in rescinding that yellow card, I don't want the opponent player to be given a yellow card. Why? Because we are trying to avoid having 2 referees refereeing the game. Whereas doing away with one action could mean that you then revert, that things change. We do not want to have the game over-officiated, because over-officiated in the sense that you could, let's say you have 4 of those situations. So the referee can't be getting it wrong and dishing out yellow cards, and then he's called into action to say, mate, there was a simulation, or there was no contact in there. It's not worthy of a yellow card. And then he rescinds the yellow card, and then suddenly he's giving it to the other player. No, that's not the situation I'd want. But anyway, let the makers of the rules make the right rules that better the game. All we want is a better game. All we want is more consistent decisions. All we want is transparency and fairness in the game. Let teams win, lose, draw, fair and square. Without, I don't want to say exceptional circumstances, but whichever way you would want to look at it, So that's my feeling about that, or that's my impression about that regarding this situation. So let me leave it at that when it comes to the Italian Serie A and what did transpire. But before we go away from the Italian Serie A, like I told you, Napoli yesterday shared the spoils in a 2-2 draw against AC Roma, with goals with a brace from Daniel Malin. Remember, this one I think is on loan from Aston Villa to AC Roma, where they had Leon Bailey on loan. I think Leon Bailey, was it over the weekend? Not over the weekend, but in midweek he provided the assists. Did he? I think he provided the assist for Tyrone Mings' sole goal that won them the game against Brighton, or prior to that. Anyways, whichever the case is. So Daniel Marin is out there on loan to AC Roma. Then Spinazzola as well as Santos were the goal scorers for Antonio Conte's side as he picked a point against AC Roma. When I say he picked a point, it's because AC Roma got the lead first, then Spinazzola equalized, then they get a penalty, which Daniel Marin converts and makes it 2-1. So twice Napoli had to come from, a goal down to rescue the situation. So like I've told you, that's a good result. Excuse me. That they'll take. And yeah, it is what it is. I'm moving on away from the Italian Serie A. Excuse me, I forgot to have water on my desk, so that's why I'm struggling a bit here. Let's go to the Spanish La Liga, where Africa will never unite is saying what the hell is happening to Atletico de Madrid. For those of you that are wondering why he poses that kind of question, it's not too far-fetched, because over the weekend, that was yesterday, they lost by 3-0 against Rayo Vallecano in that game. So you had players like Perez, players like Mendy, and Valentin being the goal scorers, as Rayo Vallecano beat up against Atletico de Madrid by 3-0 over the weekend. Now, Rayo Vallecano were in the relegation zone prior to that game. They had about 22 points. 2, that tells you how low they are on the La Liga standings and the significance of that win to Vallecano. But also, it begs the seriousness with this Atletico de Madrid side. And it's not like they did not have a good team. They had Jan Oblak return in goal. They had Clement Lenglet. They had Jose Mario Gimenez. They had Molina, Mateo Ruggeri. They had Nico Gonzalez. They had Alex Baena, Johnny Cardoso, Rodrigo Mendoza, Thiago Almada, and Alexander Soroth. Then, in the substitutions that he made, they included Robin Lee Nomad, Julian Alvarez, Obed Vargas, Ademola Lookman, and Marcos Llorente. Now, I understand these guys played in midweek, but I still do not. I still don't understand Diego Simeone why you do not begin with your A team. Why? It's the Spanish La Liga. I'd want to think that they despised Rayo Vallecano. That's the first case. In despising them, he took a bet on his bench players because, let's be honest, the likes of Nico Gonzalez, John Cardoso, Almada have not been starting many of their recent games. So, back to Africa will never unite his question about what the hell is going on with Atletico de Madrid is we're talking about a team who last week on Thursday smashed Barcelona by 4-0 in the first leg of the semi-finals of the Copa del Rey. And then, a couple of days later, you're losing to one of the worst teams in the La Liga standings by 3-0. Odd. If they had lost 3-2, if they had lost 1-0, or even 2-1, one would say maybe anything can happen in football. If they had drawn, still the same thing. But losing by 3-0 is such bad a result. Then the other thing is that we're talking about Atletico de Madrid, who are in 4th place, and I think had with 45 points. At the start of the season, given the resources they had invested in their team, I was actually tipping them to finish 2nd on the Premier League log, ahead of Real Madrid, who I thought would come 3rd. As we speak, Real Madrid are leading the standings after 24 games played with 60 points, 2 points ahead of Barcelona, who play tonight against Girona, or away to Girona. And if they do win that game, obviously they get back on the summit of the standings with a point ahead of Real Madrid. Villarreal come out 3rd with 45 points. That means Villarreal themselves are about 5 points behind Real Madrid. excuse me, and currently only 3 points behind Barcelona, who play tonight. So I honestly do not know what's going on with Atletico de Madrid this season. Because when it comes to resources, they've had the resources available to them to get some of the best talent that they can get in and around Spain and even beyond Spain. We spoke about Ademola Lookman. We speak about Alex Pena, one of the best players in that Villarreal team last season. We talk about Johnny Cardoso, very standout midfielder in that Real Betis team that reached the finals of the UEFA Conference League before losing to Chelsea, I think by 4-1 in the final. So we talk about Matteo Ruggeri. I think this one they got from Atlanta. So they have Julian Alvarez. They still have Antoine Griezmann, not in his best form, but or shape given his advancing age, but nonetheless he's still quite the experienced player. You have Alexander Soroth. You have players like Koke in that midfield. We saw him against Barcelona. He looked good. You have Jan Oblak, the captain, very, very definite goalkeeper, you know. So you look around, they have the likes of Marcos Llorente. They have the son to Diego Simeone. I think he's called Giuliano Simeone, something like that. So you look at the situation and say they are not short of talent. And even the biggest of teams will lose a league game to an underdog. That's okay. But the amount or the level of inconsistency from this Atletico de Madrid this side has been quite very disappointing. In 24 games played, they've won only 13, they've drawn 6 and lost 5. That's poor. That's bad by measure of their own standards. Then, I think it was sometime this season when somebody asked, why don't Atletico de Madrid sack Diego Simeone and just get a better manager? And then somebody tried to make a counter argument as, if they sack Diego Simeone, who are they going to get? And that couldn't have been a worse response than you could imagine. Why? Because it sort of, for me, rang bells about majority African leaders who think that if it's not them, then nobody can lead their country better than they do, or even better. So in this particular case, the person who responded with that comment seems to suggest that Diego Simeone is the best thing Atletico de Madrid can get. Otherwise, anything other than him will be a downgrade. Now, I understand, first of all, we're talking about the highest paid manager in football history, as in he was yesterday, he is today, and henceforth. Why? Because he's held in high respect and regard at Atletico de Madrid. Why? Because of where he found them. I think this is about 2012, thereabout, 2013. No, not that. I think around that period, you know, because he takes over the reins at the club. And this is against, of course, first of all, he's a former player who played for them between 2003 and 2005 before retiring at a racing club, or I think what ordinarily many of us call Racing Santander. And then after leaving after leaving Racing Club, he comes in 2011. Yes, he came in 2011. And he sees one for them, I think, 2 UEFA Europa League finals. He's taken them to 2 finals of the UEFA Champions League. When he joins the club, they were one of those struggling clubs. And competitively, gradually, he's turned them into one of the elite sort of guys, you know. So he was appointed on December 23rd, 2011. He was unveiled as the new, Atletico de Madrid coach. And he went on to, so he went on to win in his first season. He ended up winning with the team the UEFA Europa League by beating Athletic Bilbao by 3-0 in the finals. That's for the 2011-2012 season. For those of you that remember that Bilbao side that was under the charges of Marcelo Bielsa, with the likes of Ika Munain, Ibai Gomez, Ander Herrera, Xavi Hernandez, those kinds of players. Fernando Llorente, that's a cohort. So I think on the other side, Atletico de Madrid had players like Radamel Falcao, I think. What's it? So anyways, and then he wins them that. And then in August 2012, he wins them the UEFA Super Cup when they beat Chelsea, the UEFA Champions League winners, by 4-1 at Stade Louis II or the second in Monaco. So he went on to have an impressive run. And then also he guided them to, I think, finishing second on La Liga behind Barcelona and above rivals Real Madrid, which earned him all the praises. Then I think in 2013, he won the Copa del Rey. They beat Real Madrid in the final by 2-1 at the Santiago Bernabeu. In between there, like I said, 2014 takes them to the finals of the UEFA Champions League, and in 2016, he's won them 2 league titles. That's for La Liga, And I remember one of those trophies going down to the wire. So, yeah, I think, when was it? Because they also win the UEFA Europa League in 2018 after knocking out Arsenal in the semi-finals. I'm struggling to remember who they beat in the finals. I'm struggling to remember. But it's all to say he's been so impressive. When you look at his CV, what he's managed to win them. Of course, the UEFA Champions League has continued to elude him and things like that, But what he's been able to achieve with the team has been quite impressive. Nonetheless, sometimes these results, make you feel that as in modern day football, they should be able to do better, better than what he's offering them. That they can get a manager who takes them from the current level where they are to the next level, because 1, they have the financial resources. 2, they have the good players. They have really good players, So I was trying to find out when he actually wins them, because he's won 2 Europa League trophies for me, to the best of my recollection. 2011, 2012, and then there's one of 2018, But I seem to remember another where they play Fulham. Was it them who played Fulham? Europa League final? Let me find out. Because that Fulham side that was under the charges of Roy Hodgson. Yes, they got beat by Atletico de Madrid then, but it wasn't Simeone in charge. Yes, it wasn't Simeone in charge, because that was the 2010-2011 season. So they won the competition in 2011. In 2010, I think. And then they did not win it in 2011 and came back and won it in 2012. Yes, that team that had Diego Forlan, Colanzo. Yes. So anyways, but he himself has done tremendously well. When you look at the previous La Liga winners, like I said, he's won 2 of those. And winning 2 of those by overcoming the giants like Real Madrid and Barcelona, who you think are almost indomitable in there, who you think are almost indomitable in there. So his first La Liga trophy came in the 2013-2014 season. He wins them that, and Barcelona were runners-up, and I think that's the game in which, on the final day, the two sides share the spoils in a 1-1 draw. That's 2013-2014. Then he wins it again in 2020-2021. That's a sort of COVID or immediate post-COVID season, with, I think, Real Madrid coming second and Barcelona possibly third. So, and then they've been finishing within the top four, qualifying for the UEFA Champions League almost season in, season out. And I think for the 2018 edition where they win the UEFA Europa League, they had been downgraded, I think, to the Europa League. It's not like they had qualified only for the UEFA Europa League. So he has that sort of pedigree and history with the club, that 2 La Liga titles, 2 Europa League titles, 2 Champions League finals, a UEFA Super Cup, a Copa del Rey. That's good. That's 5 major trophies. I think in a period of 15 years coming on, given where he found them and where he got them, because when you look at the years, you could say he only averages a trophy every 3 seasons or every 3 years, which one would say that's not good enough, But like I said, where he found them was as bad. When you look at the La Liga table for 2009-10, it will give you the sort of impression that you need. Atletico de Madrid finished 9th with 47 points. 9th. Then, when you look at the subsequent season, 2010, 2011, when he goes on to win the UEFA Europa League, they finished only 2 places higher, in 7th place. In other words, he comes in when they are a mid-table team, and he takes them from being mid-table team to elite team, to competing, So, which is quite very, very impressive. Quite very impressive. But there has to come a point of time where Atletico de Madrid say, it's been a pleasure having you. First of all, we know he would want to go and manage in the Italian Serie A. He relishes an episode there, whether at Inter Milan or any other bigger team, one of the big teams there. But until that comes, I think Atletico de Madrid can find resources or a resourceful manager within the ranks of the different managers out there that can perhaps give them a breath of fresh air with Diego Simeone. Of course, he went on changing his football from the traditional, very defensive side kind of to morph into this more fluid and attacking kind of team. And it's not been as good as they used to be, But we'll have to wait and see. But it was a bad result nonetheless. So you had that. And then, of course, the other day, Real Madrid beat Sociedad by 4 goals to 1. A penalty burst from Vinicius Junior, Gonzalo Garcia, and then Fede Valverde were the goal scorers for Real Madrid, and Mikel Oyarzabal from the penalty spot for Real Sociedad. You had that. Then in the UK, you had largely the FA Cup for the 4th round. That will the last game of the 4th round. I don't know whatever the justification is, but that game will be played on March the 3rd between Port Vale and Bristol City. I think it's the rescheduled fixture. And then there's a game tonight between Macclesfield against Brentford. But the draws for the 5th round will be conducted today. So if you're a Premier League fan and you have you have a team in there, brace yourself, because your team has higher chances of landing a Premier League opponent than not. Because out of the teams that are still left in the competition, let's see, there are 16 teams left in the competition. Okay, that will have been left in the competition by the 50th round. Non-Premier League teams are Wrexham, Norwich City, Southampton, Mansfield Town. Then you have either Port Vale or Bristol City, which is the 50th team, and then possibly if Mansfield were able to knock out Brentford tonight, which is a bit unlikely, let's face it. Not impossible, but a bit unlikely. So, in other words, you have the possibility of you facing 9 Premier League opponents is higher than you getting one of the 5, or possibly the 6 teams that are not Premier League teams. Anyways, that's that. But Arsenal yesterday were 4-0 winners against Wigan Athletic. Very convincing result. Noni Madueke, Gabriel Martinelli, Gabriel Jesus, and Jack Hunt are with the own goal there, but were the goal scorers for Arsenal. A burst of assists from Ebelechi Eze looked brilliant against a very poor Wigan Athletic side. Wigan Athletic, I think, are now in League One. We're talking about the 2008 FA Cup winners under the charges of Roberto Martinez. No, was it 2008? No, 2008. Wasn't that Portsmouth? I think 2008 is. I think 2008. That's Portsmouth. I think for Wigan should be 2011. For Wigan, it should be 2011. Because that's when they beat. No, 2011 is Man City. Portsmouth is 2008, yes. And then Wigan is 2013, yes. 2013, fast forward, because I think they beat Man City in the final by a goal to nil. Wigan Athletic were under the charges of Roberto Martinez, who is currently the head coach at Portugal. So that's sort of the team you have. But they've ever since then, they've never been the same team. Of course, they gradually fell off the wagon. At some point, they appointed Cole Toure to be the manager / head coach. It didn't work out the way they had hoped, but it is what it is. A lot of things have not worked out for them. But yesterday, beautiful performances from Ebelechi Eze, Christian Nogard, Maz Lewis Kelly, some really, really exciting stuff. Of course, bad news for the Arsenal, the reported warm-up injury for Riccardo Carafiori. I'm trying to see whether whether there are comments of from Mikel Arteta on Carafiori's injury. You know? Oh, come on. Anyway, because it was so unfortunate. It's similar to what you had with Bukayo Saka against Leeds. He had been, ready in the lineup. Maz Lewis Kelly was supposed to play in midfield. And then, of course, he was forced to, pull out, and Lewis Kelly went to left back. And then they had to squeeze in Bukayo Saka in that midfield trio for Eze to play deeper alongside Nogard, and then Saka ahead of them. And then he only played for 45 minutes because we know he's returning from injury. And then Victor Gyökeres came in, hit the woodwork with his deflected attempt in the second half, and things like that. So we'll wait to see and hear from Mikel Arteta when it comes to Riccardo Carafiori and the kind of injury he may have suffered. When it comes to that. So we'll have to wait and see. And then of course, Martin Odegaard suffered a knee injury in that game against Brentford. So Arsenal fans, Mikel Arteta was saying, first it was the forwards, then the defenders, now it's the midfielders, and they have to cope with that. They were asking him whether injuries are becoming an issue, and he said, yeah, definitely it's an issue for them. So they are part of the game, and I've said this before. Even if you have the best of squads, if you keep getting injuries, literally for fun, left, right, and center, week in, week out, you're bound to suffer. You're bound to struggle, even when you have the best of squads. So, yeah, basically, it's that. I will get to discuss this more of this in the coming, perhaps. In the coming days, and but like I told you, do not forget this week there's the UEFA Champions League does return for the UEFA Champions League playoffs. I will get a chance to talk about those in the coming days, and among other things. Otherwise, allow me wish you a blessed day, a blessed Monday, a blessed new week. Today is the Janan Lumo Day for Ugandans. Have a blessed one. It's a public holiday, so enjoy it. For those of you that have work to do, we wish you the best of luck on your respective duties. Have a wonderful rest of the day, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye for now.